Hey Techno Studs! In this video, we're going to perform a network upgrade. That is, we're going to upgrade the links between our switches. Now here's our current network diagram. And the two switches I have down here are 2960s. And I'm going to show you a picture of those here in a second. And this switch right here is a 3750. And all of these have GigaEthernet ports. So they're all on the right side of these switches. And they have these GigaEthernet ports that we can connect between the different switches. And so really I need to decide where I want to use those GigaEthernet ports. And so one is I could use it to the outside, but perhaps I only have 100 meg going to the outside connection. Maybe this is a small business and I don't have a huge pipeline coming in. And there could be lots of traffic that happens at this bottom layer right here. There's probably a lot of communication that's happening between all of these devices down here. And so there's a good chance that I want to use these GigaEthernets between the switches. So these links between S1 and S2, and this link right here between S1 and S3. So that's what I'm going to do is I'm going to upgrade from currently we're using the fast Ethernet ports, and I want to switch to use the GigaEthernet ports. So that's what we're going to do in this video. Here's an example of one of the 2960s that I have. As you can see, there's a yellow box that encompasses these two ports. So essentially these two ports are the same port, and I can either use the bottom Ethernet port or the top, which is a GBIC. What it does is it accepts a piece of hardware like this that will slide in there and give it some additional functionality. Now this one right here is Ethernet. So I've already got an Ethernet connection at the bottom part. I can either use the bottom one, which is an Ethernet, or the top one. So really this would be more as if I was setting this up for fiber connection. I would get one of these and slide it in for a fiber connection if I had fiber connections between the switch. But for this purpose, I'm just going to actually use the Ethernets on the connections that are on the bottom of these two connections right here. So this is one of the 2960s. The other 2960 doesn't have these top two options, which is fine because I just want to use Ethernet with them. And my 3750 only has these top options. It has 4 of them available. And so I'm going to use 2 of these to slide in there, and then we're going to connect between switch 1 and switch 2 using the GigaEthernet, and then between switch 1 and switch 3, the GigaEthernet also, so we have a fast connection amongst all of these different connections. So the devices that we're going to configure on this is going to be switch 1, switch 2, and switch 3 in the headquarters. So the first step that I'm going to do, as I mentioned before, is I always like to grab a copy of the configuration in case something goes wrong, I have something to reference. I've happened to already have done that, so I can just pull up the copy of this configuration, and you can see here I have HQS1, and it was taken today. This is the second one. So all I have to do is edit these right here. In fact, what I'm going to actually do is make a copy of this, and the copy, I'll name it something like changes here. So changes, hit enter, and then I'm going to do that with each one of my switches. So I'll copy here. These are going to be the changes. And I'll do it one more time with this one right here. And changes. Okay, then I'm going to open these up and configure them with the changes I want to make. And so what I'm going to be doing is I don't need anything up until this FA, well, the one link's right here. So FA 1043 is a connection to switch 2. So that's one that is going to be going away. So I'm going to remove that connection there. So I'll delete everything else. And then I'm not going to do anything with this 44. And then I'm going to make a change to this 45. I'm not going to do anything to 46, and 47 and 48 are going to remain the same. So I can delete those as well. All right, so now I need to choose between these what connections I'm going to go to each of those switches. So I'm going to actually choose the switch GigaEthernet 101, the interface GigaEthernet 101 to link to switch 2. And I will choose the 03 to link to S3. So there, those are going to be my connectors. I am then going to add a no description to remove it from this one. And I will shut this down. So I'll do a shutdown on that interface. Same thing with this 45. I'm going to do the same thing to reset those two interfaces back to where they were at. And then I'll set the description on these two interfaces here. I'm not going to do anything with 104 at this point, so I can remove that, and 102 as well. All right, so those are the changes that I'm going to make with this. I'm not going to make other changes with here. Now, one thing that I want to do is I want to first of all enable this first part of this. I want to enable these two interfaces. So I'm going to run this command first. Then I'll physically make the connection, go and change the connection on those two devices, and then I'll come back and then do a shutdown on these two other interfaces. And that way it minimizes the time that I'm actually going to be down. So once again, what I'm going to do is I am going to bring up the two interfaces that I want to switch over to. I'm going to physically then go and connect those two interfaces and then shut down the other two interfaces. So this is the order in which I'm going to do all of this in. And then I'm going to do that on each of the switches. And so that's my process. So in fact, what I probably could do is I could record that process just so that I have a record of it. So I'm going to do that. Then the next step is going to be move Ethernet cables to two interfaces before proceeding. There we go. All right, so there is switch 1. I'm going to save that. I'll bring up switch 2 and switch 3 and make similar changes on those. All right, I've got all my documents set up here on the right side showing all the changes that I want to make. And I've got my 3 switches set up on the left side of the changes that I want to make. So now I'm going to implement this change. And so what I'll do to implement this change is I'm just going to copy this and paste it into switch 1. There we go. I'll take the next switch config that I want to change, copy it into there, and paste it into there. And then finally the last one. I'll take the last switch changes that I want to make and paste it into there. You know, one thing that some of the organizations you'll look at that you'll be a part of, they not only want to see this and have it well documented, but you actually have to go to a change control board where that they'll take a look and make sure that all the changes that you're making are going to be accurate and are changes that need to happen on the system. And so because each time we do this, it comes with a bit of a risk. Okay, so now I've made the changes on the switches. I've not disrupted my interfaces at all. The connection, the network is still up. What I'm going to do, in fact, I can ping something right now. I'll even bring up a command prompt and let's ping how about 10.1.0.21. We'll ping that, and there we are having it pinged. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect these connections, physically disconnect the connections from the old ports and move them to the new ports. All right, I've just switched over to the new ports. You can see that I missed 4 pings during the process of this. And so I did have a little bit of capture loss with here. Actually, now that I look at it, there's a few more packets that were lost during this transition. But ultimately, the downtime was fairly minimal. I switched it over. Now I'm ready to go through and make my next set of changes here. So what I can do is I can go through these ports right here, copy this, paste it into here, go into my next one, copy this, paste it into here, and then go into my next one, copy this, paste it into here. All right, so there we have it. We've made the change. And I would make this change in production because then my connections between the switches are at the faster GigaEthernet speeds rather than just the 100 meg speeds. So this would totally be something that I would implement in my networks to make sure that my networks are solid and have enough bandwidth going between all these different devices. However, let's say there's two things. Number one is I want to switch back to the way it was before because I want to make sure that this matches probably the environment that you're going to be in, or right now, if you're working with any equipment right now and you're playing around with equipment, I know that you're going to have access to the fast Ethernet ports. So we're going to switch back to the fast Ethernet ports. But for the purpose of this, let's just say something went wrong. When we made the connection and we did this next set of instructions on here, we lost connectivity. And now we need to back out of that process. So at this point in time, I have not saved anything on these machines. So my back out process here is just to reload the switches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on each one of these devices, I'm going to end here and say reload. And do I want to save changes? Well, no, I don't, because something's wrong with these changes. Something went wrong and now we don't have connectivity. So I don't want to save the changes. So I'm going to hit no with this. It's going to do a reload after this. Once it does a reload, I'll be back to my original configuration. Now that's just one backout plan. Maybe another backout plan is you rewrite these commands, but in opposite order to switch things back. That would be another good backout plan to have. But I always recommend when you're making these changes, have some sort of backout plan. And I'm going to finish this off in doing the backout plans, which the backup plan that I had was just to reload these devices. Once they come back up, I'll test them again and make sure that we have connectivity. Now I did, if you notice, something happened here. I reloaded switch 2, I'm remoted into these devices. I reloaded switch 2, and so I lost connectivity to switch 1 because I'm actually connected to switch 1. So that was interesting that I lost connectivity there. So anyways, once switch 2 comes back online, I'll have connectivity again, and then I will reload switch 1. There you have it. We are back up and running. All the devices are fully loaded now. All I need to do is now just check connectivity, go through the same process to make sure I have connectivity, which I do to the demo Pi. So I'm pretty sure that everything else is going to be working fine at this point in time. We've rolled back our changes at this point in time. So I'm hoping what you get out of this is, number one, how to implement changes on your network by taking an organized way of making those changes and documenting the process along the way. And then also to have a backup plan. So if something goes awry, you can roll back to that backup plan. And then also how to configure your different switches, because we want, if we have those GigaEthernet connections, then we might as well use those GigaEthernet connections. And I would put these changes back into place if this was a production network. But because this is our test environment, I want to continue to use the fast Ethernet connections. So feel free to do that on your equipment if you've got it. Play around with it and switch back and forth and see how the different connections react.